Just got a interesting call from a Landstar driver. Yesterday I sent an email to BCO Biz Help at Landstar. I found the address in our magazine, and basically you can ask any kind of questions, even technical ones, and someone will get back to you. You know, I was kind of skeptical because you send it to BCO kind of advisor, and I wasn't so sure that those guys would know the answer. Like, and my question that I asked, I said, I'm getting this new trailer, right, the 3-axle step, and my truck is getting old, and my truck is just a basic truck, 12,000 front, 40 rears, 235-inch wheelbase. The engine is great, very powerful, but I'm having my doubts as for, let's say, if I ever run into like a heavy load, and plus the truck might start breaking down. So my question was, when it's easy when you spec a new truck, it's easy to spec it, with extra axles or super heavy axles, but once you get the truck, then it's very expensive to add that, so it's always better to do it. It's much cheaper to do it at the factory, So I was asking about the lift axle, maybe shall I add the lift axle to the new truck if I get one, so that I can get heavier loads with the 3-axle step I'm getting, and then maybe later I can get I'm into a double drop trailer, like get a RGN or double drop and 3-axle, And interestingly, what happened is that the BCO advisor passed my email to actual driver, and I just got a call from a guy who's pulling multi-axle trailers, and that was really great, So I'm really surprised how well they handle these requests from Landstar BCOs, Like, I was looking for an answer, and I got one because I talked to a guy who's actually doing, what I want to be doing. Well, he's into much more heavier stuff than I want to do, but he gave me some advice, and basically I said, what would you change in my truck if I want to haul, let's say, 110,000 pounds, like my weight, the truck, the trailer, and the load. Let's say 110,000. So let's say I want to put 75-80,000 on the deck. And I told him my specs, and he says, well, because you run Canada, so if you get a new truck, you don't want to go above certain length, right? But I mean, in my truck, speaking about my truck, I know my engine is great, but two things he stressed, the front axle. He recommended, I agree with that completely, because that was my thinking too. He recommended getting a slightly heavier axle. It doesn't have to be 20,000 or 18,000, but what he did with his last truck, this guy said, and I don't even remember his name, but I don't think he even mentioned it. Maybe he did at the very start of the conversation. But basically he says, if you're getting into like 6 and 7 axles and heavier loads, it's always better to have some kind of reserve on the front axle. And it's important to get the tires rated for the rating of the axle, because I know that's a lot of times I was just looking at the specs I got from let's say International, right? And the guy puts in a big axle, let's say 14,000 pounds, but if I look at the tires and then I check them online, they only rate it for, let's say, 6,000 pounds each. So you get a 14,000 axle, but you have only 12,000 pounds worth of tires, so you put 14,000 on the front and they stop you. What they do, they measure, they'll just look at the information on the sidewall of the tire, and you get a ticket. So that's why it's better to have a slightly heavy axles for heavy loads, because then you can play with your fifth wheel, maybe move it forward a little bit, put some weight on the front, and especially in Ontario, where I'm from, they allow up to 16,000 on the front axle legally with no permits. In Western Canada, like I was looking up Alberta, it's 6,000 kgs which is I think 14,000 pounds. But still, you know, it's already over 12,000. In the US, of course, it's mostly 12,000, but for Canada, for example, or when you have a permit, so it's better. And then the other thing he said the tandems, he didn't necessarily recommend 46,000, you know, because most of the places, they only, even with a permit, you only get 40,000. And he said that it's just our thinking that we think that a 46,000 pound axle would be stronger, but I mean it is stronger, but it also adds weight and it adds price. So basically, from what I understand, he would go just with a slightly heavier front axle, maybe longer wheelbase, you know, to be able to distribute the weight better, but just 40,000 tandems. And number two thing that he mentioned on the truck was the axle ratio. He said that the axle ratio is probably much more important than the capacity of your tandems. And he said that he used to have like 355 on his truck, and he was pulling real heavy loads, and sometimes he had trouble, you know, like starting. Like his startability was a bit, you know, left a bit to be desired. And then when he was going uphill, a couple of times he ran into problems, but that's with, you know, real heavy loads. So basically the axle ratio must be chosen based on what kind of weight, you know, you haul. Like right now I have 358, but my tires are very small. They like spin at 520, so it's pretty much like the same as what I have now. It's almost as 373 with regular tires. But probably for what I'm gonna do is probably that's the best one, like 373s. But he was saying maybe 390, you know, for like heavy loads like 80,000 pounds, and that's it. So, and his recommendation was to wait, maybe with a truck purchase, you know, because the economy can tank again, and things are unclear. And he also cautioned me again against getting into RGN and double drops, because he says the market is saturated. Landstar has too many trailers like that, and because of that the rates are going down. So I don't know. I think he has some. It's a valid point, you know. And what I like about the step decks is that, you know, I get 42 feet at the bottom. You cannot get that with a RGN or double drop unless you have an extendable RGN, and those are very expensive and they're very heavy. You know, step deck is much lighter, right? And you know, more space at the bottom. So I don't know. So basically, there's nothing wrong with my truck. You know, like the axle ratio is fine because I have smaller tires, right? So the front can be a bit heavier, but of course I know I can probably change the front axle, but that would be, I don't know, would they change the sticker on the side of my door? You know, would they increase my gross vehicle weight rating, or would they just that's probably be like, I don't know, 5,000 bucks, you know, that's not exactly cheap. So, but basically my truck is okay. That's what he was saying, you know, like don't rush, and because my truck is very light. You know, now with this trailer, with the flatbed I have, I can take 48,000, just over 40, I think it's 48,200 pounds, and still be legal, you know. Very few guys can do that, because most trucks in the US especially are heavy, you know. But I just think I need some kind of maybe a bit extra capacity axles for Canada, because Western Canada, especially in Ontario, pretty much everybody runs the 46,000 tandems, because you can use that weight, you know, once you cross into Canada. So I don't know, but anyway, thanks to Landstar for asking this gentleman to call me, and so I got you know, lots of things to think about. So it was very good information. It was especially interesting to talk to someone who's actually in the field doing this, you know, not just a guy sitting in an office behind a desk who has some theories about the subject. This guy I talked to, he's a practitioner, so to speak, right? He does he's talking about what he's already doing for a living. So it was really useful. Thanks a lot, and thanks for watching.